we need to engage people where they are, where they're comfortable.
We are surrounded by content. Content shapes who we follow, how we lead, what we buy, and even what we believe. Welcome to the Content Generation Podcast, a Class Intercom production where we focus on the stories that come to life in schools all over the world. We highlight the students, educators, and communities who share the content that shapes our future. Welcome back to the Content Generation Podcast. It is fun, Dr. Jill, to be back in the studio talking about a bunch of engagement things that have been happening, but you've been a bunch of places. Our team's been a bunch of places. I've been a few places. We've been connecting with a lot of folks. What do you have on your mind right now, Dr. Jill?
Yeah, it's just been the 1 month I'm not traveling this year is May, so it's nice to be home for a while in the office and getting some things done. But just coming off a student contest where we had a ton of student content creators just in a 3-hour period, just creating content, asking questions, and saying this is the best day I've had all year, or that was hard but it was awesome. And my teacher heart just really loves that, as well as just being a mom who cares about what kids are doing online.
Awesome to hear. It's a fun change of seasons, seeing the spring come through. We've got a lot of graduations coming up. I know many of you are finishing out the school year right now in the next couple weeks or several weeks, and excited for all of you, but also I know it's crunch time. And one of the things that we've been talking a lot about lately is this area of engagement, public engagement, and specifically some of the tools that we've been building with MindMixer, and really exciting to see that stuff come together. But Dr. Jill, this next guest we're going to introduce, Steve Miller has, I've known him for a while, but great background, really exciting to see his work in schools. He works for an organization that helps do a lot of architectural planning, things like that. But also, in a several state area. Also, he's local, and we've got a bunch of fun connections to Steve.
Yeah, it's so funny because I know Steve through you, obviously, and I've met him a couple of times. Great guy. Learned a lot of things from the few interactions I've had with him. But I got an email from Steve yesterday, and he was in Chicago getting ready to get on a flight to fly back to Lincoln. And he said, they're looking for someone named Jill Johnson, and they had me go over and look at the bag tag, and I saw that it was Class Intercom, so I knew it was you. And I don't see you here though, so what's happening? And it's funny because I also got a call from there's a restaurant bar right by the gate, and my husband was there, but he was borrowing my bag, which had my tag on it, and he was sitting right beside it. They just happened to think that it was the table beside him had left it there, and so. It was just funny and just shows what a great guy Steve is for someone I've only met a couple of times, but to reach out and look out for me in that way, it says a lot about who he is. And I know that that's how you've always described him too. So.
Well, yes, that does definitely describe Steve. He's got family members, superintendents. He's been involved with schools on so many different levels. From the planning and organization side, he's been connected on a lot of those levels. And we had a lot of great conversations about spaces. And I think that's a beautiful concept to talk about spaces for schools, spaces for students, and how we can really utilize those well. With that, I'm excited to introduce Steve Miller. Well, welcome back to the Content Generation Podcast. We have a special guest today, and I am excited to welcome Steve Miller. Steve, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks, Ben. It's great to be here.
Well, as we've been having some conversations around your background, things that you're interested in, I know that one of the keywords that's going to come up is space. And in schools, a lot of times we talk about space as like, hey, I need some space, or I need to talk about some space. But you happen to be an expert on space. So I'm excited about that.
Well, no, it's really interesting. I work for an architecture and engineering firm, and the design professionals work a lot with school districts in delivering space that they need to complete their mission. And that could be new space, it could be refiguring existing space, But each district that we deal with has different needs, and we try to respond to that. And we try to communicate. I mean, teachers, administrators are not trained in architecture and engineering, so there's always a gap. That there's always some type of communication that's missing, and so it's our job as designers to figure out what the educators are talking about, and then try to translate how we're interpreting that into the spaces they need, whether it's classrooms, whether it's flexible space, whether it's common areas, whether it's kitchens or the kind of the back of the house operations space that they need. And so that's our role as designers, is to listen to the educator and try to interpret what they're talking about into some type of spatial layout.
Well, Steve, I'm really excited to dive into things around space with you, but I want to understand a little bit of your background. So you've come in and gotten involved in some architectural and planning conversations, but where did this all come from? You and I over the years have had all these conversations around city planning and
Right.
that area. How did this all come together for you?
Well, I am a city planner. I went to school to do that. I got my master's degree in city planning, and then I worked in the public sector for about 10 years. And then that was in the Kansas City area. And then I moved back here to Nebraska, and I've been working as a consultant since then. And city planning hits on so many different aspects of the infrastructure of a city. And I've worked a lot with transportation systems. I've worked a lot with natural resource systems. And then you just general community type planning and zoning type issues. And, school districts are part of that. And what I've always kind of ended up focusing on is how do we engage stakeholders related to these planning issues that we're talking about, whether it's planning for a street system or, a flood control project, and then educating stakeholders and gaining their input on how we as architects, engineers, and planners should design that to help meet their needs.
Well, I think it's a great background, and I know you've been involved even on the technology side,
Right.
as you had a background with MindMixer and
Right.
engagement platforms as well, and we've had lots of conversations around that too. When we think about bringing this level of engagement and communications to a school district, a lot of the folks I talk to in school communications, they have these big initiatives that plop up that maybe we get this opportunity to convey it, but they have to communicate, educate, and engage that whole community. How do you see that process working for a school district that needs new space or needs to upgrade their space? How do you communicate about it?
One of the things that I think is the foundation to any of these communication initiatives about space, about a new facility, a new school facility, or a new roadway or a new park, I think we need to engage people where they are, where they're comfortable. And so that's why online tools like MindMixer have always been so wonderful and just so different, from a public sector entity like a school district. They're always like, hey, come to us and tell us. Well, no, these tools enable us to go to them, portray and lay out, hey, here's some ideas, here's where we need your input. So I think that's the foundation of that communication, whether it's a school district or a city or a county, whatever that may be. And so that was kind of the genesis of MindMixer in doing an online engagement platform. So when we talk to schools, it's like I said, whether it's a city or a county or a school, we have to work with our client, which is a school district, and understand their needs in terms of space. What are you trying to do? Well, we only have 2 gyms. One's a competitive gym, one's a practice gym, and they're programmed 24/7. I mean, we have teams that are practicing, at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And then if we have inclement weather, then we have to have recess in the gym. And some school districts may serve lunch in the gym too, and they can't use it then for recess. So, we have we have to program or design another gym for them to meet their needs. And one of the things that is so important is most people don't understand how school districts program their space, how they utilize every square inch of what they have, to really meet the needs of various students, the students, the faculty, the staff, they use in the community. There could be community uses that come into schools. And so we spend a lot of time with our school district clients and any clients to understand how they use that space and how new space or redeveloped or remodeled space can really meet their needs. And then try to, in a very simple process, communicate that to the stakeholders. There could be electors that are going to pass a bond issue or things like that.
As I talk to communications professionals, they've got a referendum coming up. They're trying to contemplate some sort of an opportunity to move into better space. It's a really difficult thing, I think, to communicate without having someone go see it, right? We can't bring in the whole community during a passing period and help them to understand what that's like. But like, how do you help people imagine that and see the problem without feeling like it's a negative education experience?
Yeah, and I mean, there are negative things that are going on in schools because of lack of space and because of, we worked with a rural district and they had an original building that was built in 1912, something, way back in the early part of the last century. And so on the third floor in the winter, they had a radiator type heating and cooling system or heating system, and it would get to be 80 degrees in those upper floor classrooms, and they couldn't open the windows. They were painted shut or just permanently shut. And so you can just imagine how that feels to a student, to a teacher who has to be there all day. And so those are the stories that you get out of the teachers, out of the students, out of the administrators. And it's easy. I mean, everybody knows how it is to be in a hot room, to be sweaty, to be miserable. And, you can create a story around that and say, hey, one of the needs that we have as a district is to have a new HVAC heating and cooling system that can really help, accommodate and make that classroom a better place, a more comfortable place for the teacher to work, for the students to learn, and so on. So those are the kind of stories you have to try to really drill down to.
Steve, I just walked one of my old schools with the comms person. Shout out to Mitch Roush, and I went into one of these elementary school classrooms and I said, Mitch, I can smell the crayons on that radiator from when I was in fourth grade. And every student who's been in this room has probably done that at some point. But like I think about those moments, but now being, a parent and thinking about, I'm not in all the schools, but like I want a great experience. It seems like we have to find creative ways to tell those stories.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we work with our clients with too, especially you can do tours, and oftentimes, we will lead stakeholders on tours, but that means you're asking people to come to the school. It's usually at night when school's not in session. And so that's always harder. You get some people that are really interested in. And what we have done and you always try to record these too, like get a video recording of a tour. And so we found it very effective if there are students. They could be on the student council. They could be, very interested high school students that are articulate and can lead people, the stakeholders, their family members, whoever it might be, through the facility and say, hey, here's where we have to, do whatever here's where we have to go outside to go from this building to the next building, and people block the door open. So it's a safety concern and so on and so forth. So tours are a big thing. And then taking video tours too, with somebody narrating over the top of that. Here's a problem area we might have, or here's where we have a lot of congestion during a passing period, and so on, just to highlight some of those ways that the facilities are being used, so people can see if there's an issue or an opportunity or whatever that might be, that the point you want to get across.
I was wondering this. I was thinking about having this conversation. We just did a remodel at our house, and so there's two people who essentially get to weigh in on this remodel, which turns out was a lot. But like when I think about the just sheer number of people that are using the facilities that you're helping design, how do you even begin to allow people to know that their voice is heard there? How do you help them to design that? What's the process that you go through to establish a really great space?
What we do, and it's a tried and true process that our architects lead, is they always want to start with a facility assessment. So looking at existing facilities, and it's just a big spreadsheet, kind of a big checklist. They go through it, they identify every room, whether it's a mechanical room, whether it's a storage room, whether it's a gym, music room, classroom, bathrooms, you name it. And they do an assessment of all those types of facilities. So they have a really broad and deep understanding of what they have to work with. And then they move forward in that process and work with the administration, and they'll interview teachers, students, the whole user group of a school, and really kind of identify and define, hey, here's what we need, what we think we need, and compare that to the assessment. And from that process, you can usually get an idea of we need to have 4 new classrooms in this grade level. We need a preschool facility that has newborn to 4-year-old rooms in that, and we need a special playground for that because of state regulations. And you lay all this out, and then where we find the most success is we lay out all these conceptual options to the community, and that's where you use a tool to really do outreach, whether it's social media tools like Facebook or whether it's a platform like MindMixer. Put that out to your stakeholders and kind of get a test. You do a test of, do they buy that? Number one, do they agree with you? And then what would they support? In some districts we worked with, usually a new gym. They always want more space for recreation, whether it's a competitive gym or a practice gym. Well, just for some community members, that's a sticking point, and they're not going to support a bond election if we have a new gym. And so we kind of go through that. You can really lay out why it's important, but they may just say, no, we need to focus on education, classrooms, music facilities, whatever first. The athletics part comes second, because just not enough kids participate in that. That could be their assumption. But you have to, lay all this out and then figure out what kind of that taste test, what the community will support too. And I think that's the hardest, because administrators, teachers, they're doing this day in, day out. This is their life, and they really do know, what needs their facility, what their facility needs are to best, teach a student to address issues, but they have to sell that to the community too. And if they don't, the community won't support it, and then it's a real problem.
Right. Well, I think there's a real education. I walked some schools recently where they've added on a new entrance, right, for security purposes. Is certainly one of the trends. Are there some other trends that you're seeing in the design around schools that really connect with the community?
The security is number one. I mean, and if you look at a lot of the districts in Nebraska, in their rural districts, I mean, they may do a project, every 10 or 20 years. So you can imagine then, things have changed, security issues have changed. So security is number one all the time. And, having an appropriate lobby with a vestibule, so you can isolate somebody coming in and kind of do a visual check of them before they can be released into the classroom or into the common school space. And then making sure that you have adequate security on all your doors too. A lot of schools have multiple entrances, and there's key card systems and entry systems that could be automated, and so those are things that's number one. But the second one that we're seeing, well, there's two that we're seeing. The second one we're seeing is the early childhood education facilities, like I talked about, the preschools and the daycare facilities. A lot of communities see that, and districts see that as an economic development tool as well.
Sure.
And a workforce development tool. They can, use that as an educational facility for, some students, but also they can't hire new teachers if there's no daycare opportunities, if there's no daycare in a community. So early childhood education is another one. And then it doesn't matter rural or urban, career technology education, the CTE facilities. And that could be, focused on healthcare. It could be focused on culinary arts, or in the rural areas, it could be focused on, agricultural technology, welding, things of that nature.
Sure. Yeah, I just had some conversations with a CTE program a few states away that was fantastic, where they're engaging multiple districts actually in the same CTE program. Those are developing a lot of steam, and it's amazing to see how collaborative they are.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of community colleges in areas, work collaboratively with school districts. So they have, the students from a high school can go there, get college credit, and have dual credit programs. And there's just a lot of really fascinating stuff.
And it sounds like in some of those areas, you're getting somewhat of a public-private partnership dollars to help do that as well.
Yeah, and I know in South Central Nebraska, where we've done some work, there's a lack of welders, and there's manufacturers that are building center pivot irrigation systems, and so they have a huge need for qualified welders coming out of high school, and so they're helping to fund those facilities or improvements to those facilities, and they're going from like 3 welding bays to 20 welding bays, and then the students can come out with a certification in welding and go get a really well-paying job with a high school education, and with that welding certificate. And a lot of them want to do that, versus going on, and they may not know what they want to do. So investing in a 4-year college could be hard.
Right. Yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of trends in CTE programs, and it seems like the community wants to get behind that because they want people to stick around as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. And how are you finding that security is landing and engaging the community? It's a difficult communication challenge for sure.
Yeah, and administrators treat it differently, but they kind of have a pulse. Most have a pulse on their community, and they know, that they know what they can say in most instances. Some can say, hey, we've seen what's happened with school shootings across the country, and we think it can never happen here. But we know in our community, we have a lot of hunters. We have, everybody's got a gun on a gun rack in their pickup. So we need to be prepared because people have easy access to firearms. And these are the steps. These are the kind of the security steps we need to take with our facility just to protect the students that are there.
Right. So interesting. So as you're looking at some of these projects going forward, communicating about these projects, helping the community to understand how to vote and how to engage, and whether or not it's responsible with government dollars.
Right.
What do you see as the trends going forward? What's changing?
It's hard to pass a bond election. You look at in rural areas, you look at the farm economy. You look at the economy in general now with gas prices high, and so it's a hard climate to get folks to convince most folks, because most folks don't have students in the district. Most people, that's probably a smaller percentage of families that have a student in the district than don't. And so it's a hard climate, but I think most people in a community have a lot of pride over their district, their school, in smaller communities and in large communities. And so I think if you could really cultivate that sense of pride, tap into that sense of pride that, hey, our school is really identifiable. People identify our school and our community almost as one. And, that really kind of speaks to people's hearts. If they went to school there, whether it's 40 years ago or 20 years ago, that they're proud of that. And they may not have had a great time, but they may have had a great time. But you kind of pique that sense of pride. And that's one way you can get and garner support for, a bond election. And then if you're doing a bond election and you're going out to the community, you really have to show you're being a good steward of those dollars. Looking at what your levy is right now, looking at, what you want to spend, what those cost estimates are, and kind of really crafting a message that shows, yes, we're going to increase our levy by X, but because of that, we're going to get this. It's an investment we're making. Our grandparents made an investment. Our parents made an investment. Now it's our turn to make an investment in the district, and kind of carry this forward to provide these opportunities for our kids. Those are the messages that really resonate, I think.
Yeah, well, I know your firm does a great job of making a visual representation, so it feels like you can walk through it. I like your example of having students walk through with videos. We had another school district in the area I think you guys worked with that created a little squad of students to essentially be kind of like little ambassadors going through the school, which was really fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, and we've had districts where, the students that get up and talk, they're not going to benefit from the new project. They're going to graduate and they'll be, gone by the time, the new facilities, in use. But they get up and say, hey, I've had a great experience here. I have a younger sister, younger brother, whatever, and they'll benefit from this, or other people will benefit from that. And there's the students that you kind of want to tap for this. The administrators and teachers know who those students are. They're eloquent, they're committed, they have got a lot of friends. And it's interesting to see them kind of blossom if you just plant a little seed about, here's how you can help.
I feel like those are the next Steve Millers. Those are the next folks that are thinking about city planning. It's those students that are saying, hey, we can make a change.
Yeah, and it's one of the things I know we have fun with when we get to work with students is they can see, oh, here's what an architect does, and here's what an engineer does, or here's what, a planner that's working on it. Here's what different people do. And I may not know any of these folks, in my kind of circle, but gosh, I never really thought about that. That could be a cool career. So there's some self-serving stuff in it too, but everybody's proud of what they do. So
we call that cross-curricular learning, and I think it's fantastic because that communication, it's a purpose-driven way to learn.
Yeah,
and many students, myself was included, when I saw purpose in it, that's what made it all the difference. And so, Steve, I appreciate the purpose that you're bringing for schools in place, and thanks for being a part of the podcast, and thanks for the great work you're doing.
Well, thanks for asking me, and I sure appreciate it. I enjoy what I do, and it's fun to talk about it. And I think there's value that we as architects and engineers and planners bring to this process, and it's different, with every client that we work with, but it's still I'm just in admiration for educators and administrators and the time and effort and dedication that that they put to, the students in their district. And they can't turn anybody away. And, what we do is help them make a better place to do what they do.
That's awesome, Steve. Thanks for being on.